Regan, and today I'm here to do a very highly requested video, and that is going to be me talking about my favorite historical fiction novels of all time. This is a video I have been both planning and exciting to film. I have done a similar video like this in the past, but it was about 2 years ago, and since then I have read many more historical fiction novels. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive into the books. The first book I want to talk about, I don't actually have the physical copy with me. It is in storage at my parents' house, but nonetheless it is a book that I love, and that is Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wein. This is a YA World War II historical fiction novel following dual perspective of female best friends who are both actively participating in the World War in different ways. This story is such an amazing story of friendship, for one thing, but it's also just a fascinating book following a female perspective in World War II. It's not something we get very often, and also showing how they were active in the fight in their own unique ways was just a wonderful story. It's hard-hitting. It's something that I just appreciate seeing female friendship in general. It was a beautiful story that I would highly recommend reading if you haven't. It is probably, in my opinion, one of the best YA historical fiction novels I ever read, hence why it's on this list right here. The next book I'm going to talk about should be a no-brainer, and that is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is probably one of the first YA World War II historical fiction novels that I have ever read in my life. And it has been one of my favorite novels, if not my favorite novel, for as long as I can remember. You'll notice throughout the theme of this book, I really enjoy World War II fiction, though I have other books from different places. This is a very famous story following a little girl who lives in Nazi-occupied Germany. She is German, she's not Jewish. However, she is living in a time where there is a lot going on, obviously, with World War II. We follow her and her life in this German town, and she is becoming a book thief. She steals books. She protects books from the burning piles that the Nazis have, burning novels that they feel like are anti-regime or whatever, and it just follows her and her family's participation in a kind of a silent fight in the war, and it's just such a stunningly beautiful story. That will probably, I mean, there's a reason why it has stayed with me for so long, because this is a story that will impact you deeply. I guarantee it. And there's also a movie that I also liked. So like you can read and watch, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Next up, I have The Walled City by Ryan Groudon. This is a story that is technically not true, but is inspired by a real historical city in China. It's a multi-perspective novel set in this walled city in China, where basically all of the crime, prostitution, and things like that take place. This is a story that follows lots of different perspectives, and in my opinion really captures a lot of harrowing, seemingly hopeless stories in a really respectable and appropriate way. But then also we are following these characters as they grow and become more comfortable with themselves, and it's also very inspiring. I really like this story. I feel like China is a location that is not usually explored very often in YA. We're very much centered in the Western hemisphere, if you will, and I think that can be said for a lot of Western stories. And this is a book that I thought did a really great job and also had a really unique historical setting as well. Next on my list is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This is a beautifully atmospheric story set in Iceland, and it follows the last execution in Icelandic history, and that person is a woman, and basically she's living with a family until her trial happens. And it is just this story about life and existence and relationships. It's very much a slow burn, but it has such atmosphere and such beautiful writing that it really captures something that I feel Iceland has to offer. I don't know, I really felt transported there, and I also found the setting itself, this last execution, to be sort of this difficult start of a book, but I thought it was done very well. Next we have a more modern historical fiction, and that is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. This is set in 1960s America and follows a mixed race family, with the family being half Asian, half white, Asian American family in America in the 60s. This story deals with a lot of complex issues, but two of the main issues that are prevalent in this story is identity and race and basically racial identity as well as female identity. The story opens with the prized daughter of this family having been found dead, and we follow every perspective of this family as they try to both cope with this, understand what happened, and also begin to think about their own selves, because essentially the story is called Everything I Never Told You, and that is kind of the theme and the point of this book. Every person in this family is hiding so many things from each other, and that really comes through this story. This story is stunningly amazing. If you haven't read this, read it, because it is so fascinating, and I also think very important right now to read. It's just so good. Next up is a well-loved historical fiction novel, and that is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is a stunning book and another World War II historical fiction novel following two perspectives, a French blind girl and a young Nazi youth, and basically their lives in small vignette pictures and ultimately how they intertwine in a very interesting way. I read a lot of historical fiction, World War II books. I think you know that. I found this one to be probably one of the most unique and beautifully written historical fiction books. Again, it's kind of told in these short chapters that almost seem, again, like vignettes, and then ultimately everything kind of comes together in such a beautiful mosaic of a story. It's just so good and so well done. Anthony Doerr is one of my favorite writers. I've read some of his short stories as well, and he just really has a way with capturing people. He just has a way of making these small stories become this larger overall thing. Next we have The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is set in Spain, kind of in between World War I and World War II, I want to say, and it's set in Barcelona. It follows a young boy and his father, in the beginning at least, where this father takes him to this library of forgotten books. There he picks up a novel called The Shadow of the Wind. He reads, he devours it, he loves it, and in fact he starts to identify very closely with the character. Later in his life, he begins to want to read more novels by this author, but realizes that someone is systematically destroying all of the stories. And there kind of sets him out on this mystery where his life starts to reflect that of the main character of the book. This book is a slow burner, so fantastically written, has so much atmosphere. The city of Barcelona is just such a rich setting for this to be in. And oh my god, this book had me on the edge of my seat pretty much all the way through. I was so nervous at times. It was just a very fantastic novel. Like, holy macaroni, it's good. Next we have Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. This follows a young girl and her family as they get deported from Lithuania to Siberia. Basically her family are thought to be considered political upstarts in USSR, or you know, communist Russia. This is a crazy impactful book. I feel like this particular story, while happening in the World War II time, is a story that I had never even heard about until I read a story like this. I feel like this is something that really got lost in history, and oh my goodness, this book and what it says and the story of hope and perseverance and just completely unending desire to live and how amazingly inspiring that is will really knock your socks off. And also the fact that this, I don't want to spoil anything, but just the fact that this is a very unknown story, and I feel like their struggle was very unknown, and their amount of time in life that they dedicated to struggling to live is absolutely absurd and insane and just amazing in itself. The story is great. Just very good. And the last book I'm going to recommend is The Nightingales by Kristen Hanna. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and is yet another World War II historical fiction novel. I know. This novel follows two sisters and their differing participation in the war and the French resistance. One sister is very active in the French resistance, and another sister has a more silent part and is just trying to survive with her and her daughter. This story is absolutely astounding, to be completely honest with you. The perspective of these two women and their struggle to survive and to try to make change, to make their home again, was absolutely like mind-boggling. I have not been struck by a book like I was struck by this book in a very long time. I thought it was just inspiring, and I really appreciated the fact that both sisters were so different but so strong in very different ways, and they both sacrificed so much for themselves, for their families, for their country. It was just such an amazing story to read. I cannot recommend this book more. It's very much character driven. You'll fly through it. I did. This book is amazing. So yes. Alrighty guys, those are all of my favorite historical fiction novels. Let me know down below some of your favorite historical fiction novels, so I would love to know. I'm always on the hunt for more, if you will. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!